This episode is brought to you by Nicolette Mascari.
And it was 9 p.m. and we'd been in the car all day, driving all over, and nothing was hitting me the way it had hit me all those years ago. And I was crying into my glass of Pinot Grigio, and I said, I'm so set on moving here. Why am I not falling in love with these towns? And he said, there's one place we haven't been yet.
That was our guest, and I'm sure many of us will cry into a glass of Pinot Grigio if you don't get what we are looking for. In case you haven't noticed, real estate prices are on the rise. It's a mad, crazy market right now in Massachusetts and across the country. Well, we are collaborating with just the right person to help you make the best of the situation. A Wayland resident, Nicolette primarily works within Wayland, Sudbury, Framingham, Natick, Concord, and Lincoln, though she routinely travels anywhere her clients have an interest. She's deeply invested in the Metro West area, passionate about supporting local businesses and grassroots movements. A percentage of every commission goes to the educational and emotional support of families in the Dominican Republic. So whether you are looking to sell and capitalize on the upturn or negotiate your next home in this hot market, we hope you get in touch with Nicolette. Welcome back to our show. This is our second story in season 3. Liza and I met at the Women of Wayland podcast social in 2019, back when in-person socials were still possible. She came with her lovely daughter, and my first impression was that, oh my God, she's so tall and then so beautiful and so warm. Then we connected on so many different levels, and now I call her a friend. She is every bit the remarkable next-door woman we aspire to bring on this show. To me, every part of her life is intriguing. She's an accomplished actor, incredible mom of 4, and a hustling entrepreneur. Her life, her story is so rich, and you'll soon find out. But when you ask her, she might just say she's just getting started. And she is my neighbor, so I have watched her going for long walks in the morning, shuttling kids from soccer, lacrosse to horse riding lessons, and driving back and forth from Wayland to New Jersey during the pandemic. So when I say that inspirational women are just next door, I really do mean it. Liza is a perfect example of that. We like to ask our guests how they ended up in Wayland. You know, it's a small town, and of all the places they could be, they are here. Liza has such an interesting story about ending up in Wayland. Sometimes when we have been in a place for a while, you become so used to it that we don't realize that it's no longer good for us. It takes a nudge from the outside for us to even accept it and seek something better.
So we have lived in Wayland for about 3.5 years. We moved from Long Island. My husband and I met in the first grade. And we've been all over the place. We reconnected in New York. We got married in New York, moved to California, moved back to New York, had our kids. And we were just wanted to get out of the rat race of New York and Long Island. And we were both very lucky that we have the kind of careers where we could live anywhere. It depends on where you are in your life and what you want to do. I mean, I lived in New York City when I was single. It was amazing. We were back on Long Island in our hometown of Garden City for another 9 years. And after he said to me, you know, are you happy here? And I responded so quickly with, of course I'm happy here. I mean, the house is amazing. And he left the room, and I was like, what a strange response. The house is amazing. Who cares about this house? It might be the dream house, but I'm miserable. The kids seem completely indifferent to being here. And yeah, I am really stressed, and we're spending a fortune. I mean, the taxes are really high, but it wasn't even so much about that. We just weren't happy. And when I was in 2012, I was up here doing a line presentation for Sage Spoonfuls in the Magic Beans set of stores. And both Alex and I had, of course, been to Boston many times throughout our lives, but never really the outside areas, the suburban areas. And it had just snowed, and we fell in love with the area. And we thought, you know what, if we ever move, this looks like a great place to move. So when he came to me all those years later in my office, and I went upstairs and I said, I don't know why I responded that way. It's not about the house. You're right. I am not happy and I don't think you're happy. So yeah, let's move. And so we, a few weeks later, just drove up to the Natick area and Wellesley and Weston. And we spent the whole day driving around and nothing was feeling right. And I remember I had my heart set on moving then at that point, because now I'm excited. It's in my head. Now this is great. But we were staying at, the Verve Hotel right over here. And it was 9 p.m. and we'd been in the car all day driving all over and nothing was hitting me the way it had hit me all those years ago. And I was crying into my glass of Pinot Grigio and I said, I'm so set on moving here. Why am I not falling in love with these towns? And he said, there's one place we haven't been yet. A buddy of mine just sold his company to blah, 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 blah. And he lives in Wayland. And I think it's right around here. And I was like, okay, let's go look at it. And then we went to Wayland and we drove in the next morning and the sun was shining and we found ourselves right there at the Wayland Town Beach. And I still have pictures. I talked my way, past the, because I was like, we're thinking of moving here. Do you mind if we just take a look? And there's a picture of me sitting on the dock with my feet in the lake, just smiling. And that was it.
Isn't it wonderful to see a family find their happy place? Did you know that there are more real estate agents today than house listings? Surprised? Don't be. In this environment, I know just the person you need if you're looking to buy your first house or an investment property. Nicolette Mascari is tapped into latest real estate market trends, data and analytical tools to provide the most comprehensive experience for her clients, with regular insights into off-market properties as well. And she's known for her warmth, wit, and welcoming nature that puts first-time buyers, anxious sellers, and also businesses like us who approach her for help and support at ease. To contact her or to know about her, go to her site, nicmascari.com. nicmascari.com. Alright, coming back to our story. Our guest for this episode is no stranger to the spotlight. As an actress, she has graced so many magazines, TV, and radio shows. As is usually the case with film and TV professionals, her life too is already documented in painstaking detail on the web. If I'm being honest, it was hard to think about any new questions to ask her. I mean, what can I ask her that some journalist hasn't already asked her over the past 20 years? But she made it so easy. In this episode, we get to witness a raw personal side of the actress and entrepreneur Liza Huber. Are you regular, Liza?
I love this question. I honestly don't think that anybody is regular. I really think that each one of us has extraordinary gifts. I think there are two separators. I think it's your own personal drive, what you want to do. And I also think that if you want to be an entrepreneur, your relationship to fear of failure, fear of looking stupid, fear of not having enough money, fear of not being ready enough, fear of this, fear of that. Even for people who naturally just have that drive to want to do extraordinary things, they can be held back by their fear. It's just a matter of what you want out of life, your willingness to go for it, and your relationship to fear. I mean, when you look at people who are successful, people come from all kinds of backgrounds. There are people who come from the worst of circumstances, the most difficult, traumatic, horrible circumstances, who wind up becoming just extraordinarily successful and doing amazing things. There are people who come with a silver spoon in their mouth who wind up doing nothing. There are also people who come from money who do extraordinary things. I mean, I think that it's all about what you want to do and your drive to make it happen.
It is so common for kids to follow the same profession as their parents, especially in show business.
I would have never become an actress if my mother wasn't an actress. And yet, I am so grateful for the experience and so proud of the work I did when I was there. And again, some of the best times of my life.
She opens up about her time as a TV actress, her radically ingenious strategies as an entrepreneur, her financial struggles, the private and pivotal moments her husband was there for her, and her personal pain that led her to activism for cerebral palsy. So, ladies and gentlemen, brace yourself for a chat like never before with our very own woman of Wayland, Liza Huber.
When you grow up seeing that from a young age, and I definitely love being on camera and talking to people, and I'm very comfortable. I feel at home on a TV set. I love it. I don't know if I would have chosen it for myself if I didn't grow up seeing it. But here's the thing. My years on Passions were some of the most fun I ever had in my life. And we had the best time. We all started. I mean, some of the actors were 19. I think I was 22 or 23. We all were single and young. And then when the show went down, we all had all gotten married and had our first or second babies. I was pregnant with Brendan. And it's an interesting progression. Had the show not been canceled, I would have stayed forever. The money, I enjoyed it. The money was good. Now, I will be honest and say, money only goes so far. I mean, you have to feel fulfilled too. Halfway through, I remember saying to my husband, Alex, the money isn't really cutting it anymore. And this really goes back to answer your question. Was this my true passion to be an actor? And that was I started to say, no, I'm really not feeling fulfilled. I feel like I'm not exactly on the right track. So the show being canceled wound up being a really positive thing for me because it really pushed me in this direction of doing something else.
As much as we like to keep our personal and professional lives separate, they're so intricately intertwined. Often what and how we do things at work is a product of something in our personal life. For Liza, her journey as an entrepreneur begins because of her personal pain.
So I had meetings set up with producers. I had my reel put together. I mean, I was all ready to go back to acting. I mean, I wasn't a businesswoman. I was an actor. I didn't really think yet about making some huge transition. But then Brendan was born 9 weeks early and fought for his life for 6 weeks in intensive care. And, I mean, the notion of going back to TV and leaving this very small sick baby with a nanny, it was like record scratch, like game changer. This is going to be different because it wasn't like, oh, he fought for his life for 6 weeks, then he came home and he was fine. I mean, it was just one problem after another. I mean, first they thought he had a rare red blood cell disease, and then they thought that he didn't have a gallbladder, and then they thought maybe he was autistic, and because he wasn't meeting his milestones. But I said he's very alert. I don't think he's autistic. We found his gallbladder after, it took a long time to find it. We were fine with us. We were there all day, but they eventually found it with the ultrasound. He didn't have a rare red blood cell disease, but, at 10 months old, he couldn't sit up. And then at 19 months old, he couldn't even stand on his own. And so I wasn't even thinking about work really so much at that time. And at the 6-month point when he came home, is when I made, because I love to work, but I knew I wanted to be home with them. So I knew that going back to acting was just not going to happen. I wasn't really fulfilled anyway. And I still had this idea for baby food products. So once Brendan was home for 6 months and we knew he was stable, now we knew he wasn't meeting certain milestones. We had, 5 days a week physical therapy, but he was stable. We were past the point where we knew he had the potential to pass away, which was certainly a gigantic relief. I started thinking about this baby food idea because at that point, look, there was still this is 13 years ago, so there was still BPA in the plastics. I mean, it was like the organic movement was just starting, but I did know that I wanted to make his food. But I used to be on set at 6:45 in the morning, and often 4 days would go by and I wouldn't see him. I mean, we'd be filming. Sometimes it would be short from 6:45. I'd be home by noon, which was amazing. And other weeks I'd be at work at 6:45 and not be home till 2 in the morning. So I was trying to find products and a system where I could make a ton of food at once and store it in the freezer. So at the very least, I knew that he was having the food I lovingly made for him. And there was nothing. There was nothing. And I just had this idea in the back of my head, wow, there really should be a product on the market. I sat on the idea though for 2 more years because I was so busy. I didn't, I was working for NBC and, we were making good money and there was no time or desire. It was just, an idea in my head. But then when I was pregnant with Brendan, just, a year and a half, not even a year and a half later, I think it was 11 months later, and the show was canceled. I was still thinking about it, and there still was no products on the market. But then we moved back to New York, and when Brendan was born very prematurely, and that's when I made my shift. I sat my husband and a relative down, and I said, look, I have this idea. It's been in my head forever. Unbeknownst to you, I've done hundreds of hours of research. So to answer your question, it was going to start out as a book and some storage jars. And my husband and this relative threw me some seed money, a little bit of seed money, and we did a 2-year concept to creation. And it just was growing. And the ideas were I started to realize, okay, I love being an entrepreneur. I have a lot of ideas. This is my true calling. And I just was excited. And then I got pregnant with my daughter and I was on bed rest. So I finished my book. I started sourcing product and we launched with these 3 different baby food kits. And I think we had like 8 different products at launch. Either you could buy them, individually or together. And when we launched at the Big City Mom's Biggest Baby Shower, at the end of 2011, I knew that this was going to be a really big deal because at that point there were only 2 or 3 other companies even touching this area. So Sage Spoonfuls was one of the pioneers of the homemade baby food movement.
I have an anecdote I must share. Soon after I had my son, one of my girlfriends had her first child and was visiting us here in Wayland. As we hung out and watched our sons play, I noticed she kept on raving about the products she was using for her newborn. The containers, the cups, and blender, and on and on. And I was like, wait a minute, I've seen them before. They look familiar. You guessed it. They were Sage Spoonfuls. Okay, back to story.
It was a consumer show. I said, we're going to put a lot of money into this. We're going to make a really big splash. We got a 20 by 20 space. We had a whole custom booth made up. We had a whole team there. And for 6 hours, we were slammed. We couldn't have a drink of water, go to the bathroom. I mean, we had major media, all the biggest bloggers there, all the biggest influencers. I just knew. And we were nationwide and Bye Bye Baby 5 months later. I mean, it just took off like wildfire. And I remember waking up 6 months after launch in a sweat. And I woke my husband up and I said, oh my goodness, did I just start a brand? What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? I thought it was going to be a small boutique kind of book and jars mom thing. And it has just, taken off like wildfire. We just launched into almost 300 ShopRite stores. It's one of the largest grocers in the Northeast. And our glass jars are the number 2 top selling glass jars on for baby food and on all of Amazon. It is we're just exploding. So it's been this amazing journey. And so it was the cancellation of the show, going through this journey with Brendan. And I realized that being an entrepreneur is my deepest, deepest passion. I love it.
Liza has devised several ingenious strategies. She shares some with us on this episode. So listen intently and reach out to her. I'm sure she has more tricks up her sleeves. First, unlike most startups, she never took any VC money. Usually the amount of money a startup has raised and the VC firms that have invested is a matter of pride. Of course, the support is there, but that is how they get massive valuations, go public and cash out, not Liza. She is the sole owner of her business and has never taken any VC money. She found a never heard of financial method, at least to me, to keep her entrepreneurial venture going.
Why don't we start with funding? To this day, I'm still 100% owner. I never took on VC. However, I have utilized every single other funding option I could possibly think of that's out there. when I first started, my husband put in some money and a relative put in some money. And I want to say, that's a blessing and a curse when you borrow from friends or family. If you have friends or family who are financially willing and able to help give you some seed money to start, that can be wonderful, but it can also be a disaster. It can be harder to work with friends and family, to borrow from friends and family than a bank. So you need to have an agreement. I mean, for me, there were no handouts. I mean, my husband, of course, gave freely, but the relative, I mean, there were like, that money was expected to be paid back. There were legal documents and interest needed to be paid back. I mean, there were no handouts. And it caused a lot of problems. It really depends on the person. And this was a difficult relationship always. So I'm grateful for the help, but if you're going to borrow from relatives, you need to everyone needs to know what's happening. So that's the way we started. The first 3 years, and I want to start off by saying I feel very lucky because not everyone we were a 2-income household, and not everyone can just say, honey, you know what? I'm going to stop doing this. You're going to have to take over for a while. So I'm very blessed in that aspect that he was able, because I was making at that point more than he was. He was doing very well, but being on TV, so to just take that away. Oh, and now I'm not going to bring anything in for years. And I also need your help. I mean, he just has believed in me more than anyone from day one. So for the first 3 years, we put in our own personal money. My husband drained his 401k twice for me. We took a lot of financial risks. We had home equity lines of credit on our first house. Then when we sold it, paid the home equity line back. Then with the second house, it was the second and third year of the company, and we were growing like leaps and bounds, and we needed a lot of money. And so he took on a gigantic risk for me. He became the sole guarantor of a $600,000 home equity line of credit. He said, don't ever think that I don't believe in you, because if something happens, they're coming after me, not you, because it was only 3 years in. I mean, it's so hard to get a loan. But we did have this home, and we were very lucky. And anyone listening might think, oh, well, isn't that nice? She had this big house that she could get a home equity line. And you know what? Yeah, it was very lucky. But the sacrifice on the other end, when we sold that house, we had to pay back the mortgage. We had to pay back the $600,000. So we sold that house and we had no money. We moved to Wayland with no money, zero, nothing. We could barely pay the movers. We rented a house, and we saved up for two years to buy the house that we bought last year. And so it comes with sacrifices when you put in your personal money. And after that, I said, honey, thank you so much. You've been so amazing. We're not going to put in any more of our personal money, because now the company was really doing well, and the revenue coming in, like I wasn't taking any distributions. The revenue coming in was helping to grow. But then we had another growth point. Okay. He's like, Liza, I can give you some money. I'm like, no. We decided we're not doing this anymore. So I investigated online loans. And at that point, my credit was amazing. And so I was able to get like $100,000 line of credit from an online lender. And I highly recommend that. Look, the interest rates are higher and stuff, but I was funded within like 72 hours or something, and that helped grow. And then my pay history was so good that it was able to be re-upped a little more. But then,
it's fine to celebrate success, but it is more important to heed the lessons of failure, said Bill Gates. When it comes to entrepreneurs, we often hear great stories of success. Less popular are stories of their failures and what they did having failed. But you know what? Every entrepreneur will tell you how significant failures are for success. Liza's journey isn't any different.
But then I also was doing on one credit card, like a lot of entrepreneurs do. And my credit card was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I put my head in the sand and I was like, it'll go away. It'll go away. Well, it didn't go away because I ignored it. One day I got my bill And it was like a $50,000 minimum payment due. And I was like, how am I going to do this? So I thought, oh, I have such good credit. Let me extend or re-up the online thing. But at that point, my credit was so bad. It went from being in the 700s down to like 400 something, as it should have, because I ignored my credit card. Yeah. So then I couldn't get any loans or anything. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because we're growing. I am not taking any more personal money. We didn't even have any, my husband, we didn't even have any more to give. We were renting. We were kind of hand to mouth for a little while. I believe in myself, and to the point, like, I can get myself out of anything. So it was time to figure this out. I didn't have enough money to support the growth. I had VCs coming at me and they wanted to invest, but it didn't feel right. But I needed money. Okay, my credit is in the toilet. I owe all this money on the credit card. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And this was probably 2 years ago, because I needed like so much money. We were growing so fast. And I was in my office here, which is right next door to you, which I love. And I was like, Liza, put your big girl panties on now and you're going to freaking figure this out. Mm-hmm. And I have 4 rooms in my office and I was doing laps and doing laps and doing laps and doing laps. And I said, you know what? Because for a year, I had been sending like $3,000 or $4,000 a month to the credit card, but it wasn't enough, and it wasn't enough. And the interest rate was 29.99. And so many entrepreneurs have this. They build on their credit cards, and no one's talking about this. And I want to talk about it because it's so important. Don't put your head in the sand. Figure it out. So what I decided to do was call the credit card company. And I said, look, as you can see, I'm in trouble. I'm not in a good way here with you guys. And as you can see, though, I've been trying. Is there anything you can do? And to make a long story short, I said, can you offer financial assistance? Can you offer anything? And he said, why can't you pay your bills? Why did this get out of control? And I explained it to him completely. Everything from the home equity line to launching the company to having a son with cerebral palsy who needed a lot of therapy that wasn't covered. And he said, okay, hang on. This man came back on the phone and he said, okay, here's what we're going to do for you. We're going to take your interest rate from 29.99 down to 9.99 starting right now. And if you can pay $1,700 a month, we'll let you have 7 or 8 years to pay it off. I started crying. I'm not a crier. This was just 2 years ago. Yes, because we were in the new house. I started crying and I felt like the weight of the world being lifted off my shoulders. And, not every credit card company is willing to do that, but it allowed me to get that under control. But I was very lucky that they did that. So, but now here I am, that's taken care of, but I still need money. We're growing and I still need money. Thankfully, we grew 100% year over year for 3 years in a row. So the revenue really helped. And now then it was 18 months ago. Now we're taking another big leap. Now we're talking about not just launching into 10 stores here or 5 stores here. Now we're talking about expanding the line, going international, and launching in 300 stores at a time. And my credit was still not good. I met with banks and I learned so much about banking in 2 weeks, the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and different grants and different loans and crowdfunding. And I spoke to a VC and another VC and I'm like, nothing feels right. And I said, gosh, I've met so many people. And I was at the Chicago International Houseware Show where I met a bunch of factors. And I had never heard of a factor and I didn't know what they were, and they all work differently. So about a year ago, and I looked through my stack of cards and I interviewed 3 different factors. And basically what they do is they kind of front you the money on your receivables. So, cause what happens when you have a physical product line, you're getting it made, right? Then it takes 3 months to get to you. And then let's say with Amazon, okay, I sell it. It's net 90. I'm not going to get paid for another 3 months. So I'm holding the bag on that product for 6 months. I'm going to spend $100,000 on inventory, but I'm not going to get paid for it for 6 months. So what the factor does is that I still have to hold the bag for the 3 months, but we get our Amazon orders. I gave the factor our Target account and our Amazon account, our 2 biggest accounts. And we get our Amazon orders on a Monday and I'm paid on Friday. And so that has been our thing. So basically it's anyone who has a physical product line. I highly recommend working with big retailers. I highly recommend looking into factoring. Every factor works differently. And anyone, if you're interested, can DM me. You can email me at liza@sagebears.com or DM me at Liza Huber on Instagram, because I've learned a lot about it. And actually, I highly recommend using a factor who also can offer PO funding, because now we're taking a giant leap again. Our orders are now, we got 6 figures in orders just for last week alone. Wow. This is amazing for us, but I don't have the inventory. So now I'm getting some purchase order funding from the factor. So a lot of entrepreneurs have to go to VC, because you either you are trying to do a co-working space and you need a big team and you need real estate, or a restaurant, or absolutely, or you don't have, personal money to start out. But nowadays there's a lot of options. There's a spectacular crowdfunding campaign called I Fund Women. They are amazing, and they also offer coaching. And gosh, anyone who's starting a company or who even has an established company who needs more funding, if you're a woman-owned business, I highly recommend looking at I Fund Women. They are incredible. So you have friends and family, you have grants, you have micro loans, you have the SBA, you have bank loans. I met with so many different banks, but nobody really. Even last year, being in business for 7 years and making 7 figures for 5 years in a row, and showing that the product line, we're doing very well, but it was my stupid credit. It still isn't back up in the 700s where it needs to be. So my number one piece of advice is keep your credit score in the 700s. Your options for financing are going to be so much more. And I also want to say, do not feel like you have to run to a VC. Don't feel like look into other options like I Fund Women, and there are so many other options, because when you are new, you have to give so much of your company away, and you may not have to do that.
Guess what? Doing things differently doesn't end with factors for Liza. She figured out yet another way of getting things done. So how many employees do you all think Liza has?
1. No, I'm not doing everything. The way I've been able to run this and stay 100% owner is I am the only employee of the company.
Are you surprised or shocked? Well, her company continues to grow using unconventional strategies. Keep listening to learn more about clever use of consultants and third-party providers, create financial opportunities for others, and deliver customer-centric products.
I have built the company using 1099 workers and contractors. My COO, who makes 6 figures with me, is a consultant. So she does all of her own things. My warehouse is a 3PL, a third-party logistics. They do my warehousing. They do customer service, order fulfillment, bookkeeping. I have an accountant. I have multiple attorneys. I have graphic designers. I have web people who work on the web. I have marketing consultants. Everyone is a consultant. Everyone is a third party. So I'm not paying anyone's taxes. I'm not taking on that burden. And I said to myself all along, I'm like, gosh, I'm doing things really differently than I see everyone else. But you know what? Different is good. Different is good. And I've been able to, relationships is everything, right? Relationships are everything in life and in business. I've been able to find contractors and suppliers who give me some really good terms, who allow me to have a net 60 or a net 90, so I can stretch my cash out, so I can pay over time instead of, you're spending 100, you're spending all your cash here. And that's the way I grew the company to where it is now. Now that doesn't fly anymore because we're ordering, when you have 6 figures in orders in 1 week, like that's a lot of product, and we're in a big shift now. So the purchase order financing is actually very helpful for me because it allows me to just order giant amounts of product. But then I'm paying the factor back on terms. So yeah, that's the way I've been able to stay 100% owner, is by growing at a pace that's comfortable for me, and using spectacular contractors. I mean, that's the way I've done it. And I look back on it now and I'm so proud of doing it differently, because it's working.
And just when you think you've heard about all her bravery, Liza surprises once again. After her decade-long run with Passions and a successful run with Say Spoonfuls, Liza still had much more impactful work left in the tank. And the motivation once again was personal. Sometimes events in your life hit you so hard that you can't let it go. Her son's diagnosis is exactly that for Liza. She kept it to herself for a long period of time for the sake of his privacy. But she knew deep down that she was going to come out with it and not just reveal the news to the world, but rather do something meaningful. And she did.
For me, I didn't talk about Brendan's cerebral palsy in the public or much at all until he was 7 years old. I didn't really know what to do about that, because you want to protect your child's privacy. But then as he's getting older, I mean, it's clear that there's an issue here. And, I thought two things. I thought, I don't want to keep this a secret. This is nothing for him to feel ashamed of. But I also don't want to throw him under the bus, and, I don't want to take away his privacy. But also I have this platform. No one's talking about cerebral palsy, really. I have this wonderful platform, and I know that I've really been wishing that I could meet more moms of children with cerebral palsy. I think it would be sad not to bring awareness to it and use my platform for good. So I decided to tell his story, and we did it in a big way. We did it with a 4-page spread in People magazine, and it was really beautifully done. And his story was really told. And the night before I knew the issue was going to come out, I felt like I was going to throw up, because I had kept it to myself for so long. And I knew that the story was going to be told in a really, respectful way to him, and really at the core to bring awareness about cerebral palsy and to bring more understanding about it. And so we went public with his story with a 4-page spread in People magazine. And, we hired one of the best publicists, James Grant, in New York, and he's so elegant. There are very few publicists who are elegant, and I can tell you that he is amazing, because we wanted to make sure that we were using our platform to tell Brendan's story in the most respectful way without taking away any of his privacy or anything. And I have to tell you, it was People magazine, and it was the Meredith Vieira show, and it was Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz, I think, had been on the air for 9 years at that point or something. I had never addressed cerebral palsy. And it was just magazine interview after magazine interview. And it was just an incredible year of just bringing awareness to cerebral palsy and working with United Cerebral Palsy of NYC. It was amazing, and it wound up being a gift to me, because I had probably 400 emails from only after the People magazine thing, flooded with emails from parents and grandparents who said that their child or grandchild had cerebral palsy. And a huge portion of those parents said, have you looked into a selective dorsal rhizotomy? Do you know about Dr. Park at St. Louis Children's Hospital? And I did know about Dr. Park, because when Brendan was 3, I had heard of a selective dorsal rhizotomy, but it's a very scary surgery. I mean, they are taking off one of the vertebrae, and they're pulling the nerves outside of the spinal cord and clipping a lot. I mean, it just sounded like horrifying. And I thought, okay, he has sort of mild to moderate cerebral palsy. It's a non-degenerative condition. He'll be okay. He'll just have the swagger. And I had written off the whole thing. But then, I mean, just all of these emails. And then, I thanked everyone and I whittled it down, and wound up becoming very friendly with two of the parents. One of them who live in Rhode Island and one of them who are in Ohio. And the gal who lived in Ohio, the mom was a physical therapist. And her daughter was only a year younger than Brendan. And she had just had the surgery with Dr. Park and it changed her life. And the surgery happens to be, Brendan happens to have the exact kind of cerebral palsy at the exact level that this surgery is good for. Brendan has spastic diplegia in his legs. He could walk. Cerebral palsy is categorized in 5 ways. Level 1 being so mild you wouldn't notice, to level 5 when your body is basically stainless steel and you can't even move. Brendan was a 2+, and now he's a 1. But this new friend of mine, we spoke on the phone and she said, you have to just go see Dr. Park. Just go see him. What harm can it do to go see him? And I said, okay. And we got very lucky to get an appointment right away. And we sat there and he said, look, even though cerebral palsy is non-degenerative, Brendan's going to wind up in a wheelchair or have a very difficult time walking because over time, the spasticity, it eats away at your body. He said, Liza, I cannot tell you how many 30 and 40-year-olds I'm doing the surgery on now who were just like Brendan, but now they can't even chase after their kids because all that tightness, it messes up your hips and all this stuff. So here I am thinking about Brendan as a little boy, just wanting him to be able to tie his shoes. I never thought he'd be able to ride a bike or swim in the deep end, but Dr. Park was thinking about him as a grown man. And he was the pioneer of the surgery. He's probably done 7,000 of them at this point. People fly in from all over the world. So that was February 11th. We were there having surgery March 12th. And we had no choice. We had to do this for him. And it was a brutal recovery for him. To make a long story short, it changed his life. Dr. Park changed his life. He has no more spasticity. He had 5 days. He had to totally relearn how to walk. 3 months after that, we went to his partner, Dr. Matthew Dobbs, who is a hero. He's a pediatric orthopedic surgeon who did a tendon lengthening, which is another thing that is very, very common with kids who have CP. And Brendan can walk upstairs without holding on. Brendan can ride a bike. Look, he's 11. He just now learned to ride a bike this summer. I never thought he'd be able to ride a bike. 2 summers ago, he said, Mom, we were at the pool. He said, I want to jump off the diving board. And I'm like, well, I think that maybe you're going to drown. I don't know how are you going to have the strength in your legs to get up, but I'm not going to hold him back. I got in the water. There were 2 lifeguards on either side, ready to go in. And we're like, you know what? We're all here. Let's do it. That kid jumped in the water and he had the strength to kick himself up. The whole place was going bananas cheering for him. I'm crying. I'm going to drown myself. And now just this past spring break last year, I was like, oh my, we were in Miami. He wanted to go in the ocean. I'm like, dude. But I was like, can I put floaties on you? Can I put a vest on you? He's like, I am a 10. I'm like.
Since recording this episode last year, a lot has happened, of course. The world has seen and is still witnessing the horrors of a global pandemic. While by and large, the pandemic has meant economic and public health devastation, some have managed to survive and perhaps even thrive. I'm happy to report that Liza and Spoonfuls have fared well during the COVID-19 pandemic, increasing their presence online and distribution in brick-and-mortar stores. One of them is Pottery Barn. Yes, how wonderfully far Sage Spoonfuls has come. Of course, our women of Wayland only had to become an undercover boss and work in the warehouse instead of her office. And about Brendan.
He found his strength. And every single month he's doing something that I didn't think he'd be able to do.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channel. Despite the times, we have seen a steady increase in our listenership, and we are very thankful to you all. Stay tuned, we'll be back with another story soon. Till then, signing off, this is your host Yamini, and you were listening to Women of Wayland, the podcast.